Last Caherlick, and Minister, welcome again. Actually, interestingly enough, there's a similar theme. It's a continuation of a similar theme, all about getting the maximum number of people housed really is the issue. Housing for All, the government's multi-annual, multi-euro programme, is aimed at improving Ireland's housing system and delivering more homes for all types of people with all types of housing needs. We are all aware in this House that housing policy is undergoing a period of immense reform. We are also in agreement that such a degree of reform is necessary to prevent the housing crisis from exacerbating in the years ahead. Few would disagree that Ireland's planning system is excessively complicated and burdensome. In fact, it is for that very reason that my colleague Minister Peter Burke is setting out to reduce the legal red tape that is hindering the construction industry's ability to accelerate the development of thousands of new homes. And I'd certainly call on Minister Burke to keep accelerating that process, and I know that he will. And also, one has to, from these chambers, condemn NIMBYism. Everybody has to see the bigger picture in these times of difficulty. To develop more much-needed housing, it is essential that our planning system is aligned with the government's own housing delivery objectives. It is imperative that we get this right. We can have the best intentions, but if the practical implementations of current planning guidelines make certain developments unviable, then that needs to be examined. A key goal in both the National Planning Framework and the National Development Plan is the compact growth of cities and towns in Ireland, compact growth, in a way that creates more attractive places in which people can live and work, preventing urban sprawl. We have all heard the anecdotes of apartment developments that have planning permission granted but are not being built because they are unviable. There is a strong case to be made for the construction of apartment buildings in our cities, and I think they should go higher, but we'll come back to that. But much less of a case for those same units outside of our cities. And this is the difficulty that in some of our computer towns and other towns, we're building apartments to achieve the planning density regulations, but there's not a demand for the apartments and they're not being sought. And then also the apartments cost $450,000 on average to build compared to $300,000 for the houses. So there's a whole unviability there that needs looking at. In some instances, apartments are being built on suburban developments, not because they are attractive to owner-occupiers, but because they are necessary to bring developments in line with planning density regulations. Without them, developments will not reach the required density, so we need imaginative responses here. I also think personally that we need smaller houses on the continental model because family size and culture has changed, and I think that should be reflected in housing size, but without going radical at it, but there should be. In recognising that more supply is the only way to meet the high level of demand that exists for housing, I think we need to examine ways we can introduce a more streamlined planning approval process with a set timetable on the part of a board planola, and take measures to address the current backlog of planning appeals. That's bizarre, as we all know, as in the practice we do. I want to ask the Minister if she, on behalf of the Minister, believes that changes to planning guidelines and regulations concerning house design, site layout and density would assist in the availability of housing. In my view, what it comes down to is increasing planning system efficiency to increase availability. So basically, I'll come back in the last minute. I have other points, but I know that there's a review going on in the department, and I'd like to know how that's progressing. But I think we have to look at the whole design, maybe the size, the green area in front of the houses, more allotments for individual families, etc. there, and smaller maybe pitches, but a whole complex changes there that would utilise space much more. So I look forward to the Minister's response. Thank you.
Minister. Thank you, Chair. And I would like to thank Senator O'Reilly for raising this matter, and I'm taking it on behalf of Minister Burke, Minister for Housing, Local Government and Heritage, and the compact growth of cities and towns of all sizes in order to create more attractive places in which people can live and work is a key objective of the National Planning Framework. the Department of Housing, Local Government and Heritage is in the process of developing Section 28 Sustainable and Compact Settlement Guidelines for planning authorities. The SCSG will supersede current Section 28 ministerial guidelines for planning authorities on sustainable residential development in urban areas. The Sustainable Residential Development Guidelines, last issued in 2009, and the SCSGs will also supplement other relevant guidelines such as the Sustainable Urban Housing Design Standards for New Apartment Guidelines for Planning Authorities 2020 and the Urban Development and Building Heights Guidelines for Planning Authorities in 2018. A working group was convened in June 2022 to work through key issues. The working group included representation from construction industry, private built environment practitioners, professional bodies and the public sector. The group, via a series of workshops in June, and August and September 2022, discussed the interrelated issues of density, visibility, land use, transportation, placemaking and quality design. This included general discussion in relation to the housing standards and in relation to the potential for new and more compact housing typologies seen in other countries at suitable locations in Ireland. Following completion, the draft guidelines will be placed on display for a focus period of public consultation. This is targeted for Q4 2022. All interested parties will have an opportunity to make submissions on the guidelines at that stage. Submission made during the public consultation period will be reviewed, and where appropriate and necessary, amendments will be made to the published draft. The guidelines will then be submitted for approval and publication by the Minister for Local Government and Planning. Once published, planning authorities and An Bord Pleanála will be required to have regard to the guidelines in carrying out their functions. That is the Minister's response. But if I could, in the time that's allotted as Minister for Disabilities, I would like also to have a moment to build on that. So when we talk about the guidelines, I would hope that people from the disability community would also participate in the consultation. It's very important to discuss universal design and universal accessibility. And when you talk about the various models and standardisation of the houses, within that, we should also have the standardisation of houses that would be suitable for persons with disabilities and their various needs to be incorporated, and they be part of the overall plan for living within the communities. So the whole motto of people with disabilities, nothing about us without us, should also partake into the development of how we also look at developing our Housing for All strategy to ensure everybody in the community has a right to access housing. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Laska Hirlich. I couldn't agree more with your latter comments. Just to say that the current guidelines came into operation in 1999. They haven't been updated since 2009. So that makes the updating of them and the review of them and all very urgent. I am happy to note that there is commitments to immediate progress there. I personally think we should be looking at modular homes a lot more. I think we should be looking at timber framed homes more. I think we should be looking at building up in the cities. Look at the continental situation. We can build up beautifully and intelligently in the cities. And I just think we're going to have to get creative and imaginative, because we can't have people unhoused and, almost fiddle while Rome burns. We have to act proactively to deal with it. Thank you very much, Laska Hirlich.
Thank you, Chair. So the National Planning Framework sets out the vision and strategic objectives to support Ireland's national, regional and local spatial development in economic, environmental and social terms to 2040. And the delivery of increased supply of sustainable, affordable homes for people is an integral part of this vision and remains the Government's top priority. The Sustainable and Compact Settlement Guidelines currently being developed by the Department of Housing, the draft of which will be published by the end of this year, will support this increase in housing supply, whilst also supporting the development of sustainable and amenable neighbourhoods that promote a high quality of life for residents, and the significant potential for new housing typologies to meet the need of Ireland's diverse household types has been recognised, and officials from the Department will continue to explore these issues. Thank you.